Hello, everyone. My name is Haseeb Khan, and I am the Director of Innovation and Technology at Tkxel. And today we have Howard Holton with us, who is a very experienced CTO. So, hello, Howard. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Haseeb. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for taking out the time, and I welcome you officially on Better Tech.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm always happy to do these things. They're a great way to kind of introduce other people to what we do and kind of how we do it, and maybe give them a new perspective.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Howard, I have been going through your profile and I have seen that you have worn multiple hats. You have been a CTO, you have been a CIO, you have been participating in public events, and I mean, a very established speaker. So, it would be great if you can tell us a bit about yourself and what are you up to and everything.
Sure. One of the things that I really like is kind of how people found their way into technology.
Mm-hmm.
Some people make an active choice. Some people kind of have the choice thrust upon them. I fit very well into that second bucket. My dad was owned a law office and was a law professor. And from a very early age, I really figured I would be going into law. If anyone remembers the O.J. Simpson trial, my dad recorded every minute of it, and then my evening education was to sit down and watch every minute of the O.J. Simpson trial and argue the case.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was a very interesting upbringing. It was kind of planned, and then all of a sudden, I got into baseball cards. And in getting into baseball cards, I'm nerdy in most of the things that I do. I wasn't interested in baseball, just the cards. I developed a little piece of software, a little database program that would allow me to keep track of my collection and then the change in value month over month using the Beckett Trading Guide. When my dad found out I could do that, he asked me for some help on a problem he was having in WordPerfect. And we ended up turning that into a piece of software. That was when I was 11. So I got started relatively early in the field, and really it was just kind of a hobby at first, right? Even producing the software. And then I found out that companies needed people to really kind of make the software work. Computers were still new-ish. And so I rapidly turned to consulting as a way to kind of, make money. And that became a career as I became more and more addicted to kind of the constantly changing, constantly evolving, constantly adapting market that is technology. And most recently, I spent time as CTO of Hitachi Vantara, where I consulted with the Fortune 1000 and global governments in the C-suite on IT strategy, data strategy, and digital transformation.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, that's very helpful introduction, and I mean that's quite a lot that you have done. I mean, all the way from law, ending up into a baseball ground, and then going towards technology finalized. I mean, it's sort of quite a roller coaster ride, I must say, that you have in your career. That sounds exciting. So, Howard, we have seen that the role CTO in general is basically one of the most talked about roles in general, not just the technology industry. And we have been seeing poor CTOs all the way up to, I mean, very successful CTOs. And that is also the difference between an ordinary CTO, and an expert one. So how do you, in your experience, differentiate the ordinary CTO from a good one? Or what defines, in general, an ordinary CTO as compared to a good one?
So it's executive leadership. And that's kind of a partial answer. I think there's a series of components that make an expert CTO. The first is an absolute love and adoration for technology, but not for technology's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If you're not a technologist, I don't think the CTO seat is the best for you, to be honest. But frankly, you can get away with being a CIO and not being a supreme technologist. I don't think I don't think that's going to continue to sustain as we move more and more into a DX world. But in addition to being a technologist, a CTO really kind of is the face of future technology within a company.
Mm-hmm.
right? The goal of the CTO is to be strategic and very forward-looking.
Mm-hmm.
The traditional CTO really kind of managed the software development teams, but as we look to what the CTO of the future is, the CTO of the future really is going to be the person who's really focused on that kind of future look. Well, to be focused on that future look, you have to be able to do a few things. In addition to being a technology evangelist and really have a love and understanding of kind of where technology is, where technology as a market is going, where innovation is coming from, you really also have to have the ability to communicate that very, very well. And so I think charisma is an important function of a modern CTO.
All right.
Kind of the next piece really is courage, and probably the most important one, if I'm being honest. Because if you're charismatic, if you've got good leadership, if you've got a clear understanding of technology, but you're not courageous enough to take the next step and really kind of push the boundaries of where you are and be an agent of change, I don't think you're going to find success. But if you put all those things together, and you notice I threw leadership in there, and you have the ability to inspire people, both those that work for you and those external to you, you have a clear understanding of technology and where technology is going. You have a beautiful kind of attachment to technology for the sake of improving business, not just for technology's sake. And you have the courage to put all that into action. I think you're in a really good space to be a powerful, in-demand expert CTO.
Right. That's helpful. So also, I mean, as you have also said, that the role of a modern CTO is sort of evolving. It's not just like, I mean, a pure technologist only, but there are like various aspects of it that one has to be comfortable with to be successful. So what, in your opinion, is going to be or currently are some of the key challenges being faced by today's modern CTOs?
I think the biggest challenge really is not understanding kind of the big picture and the personalized picture, right? So the big picture is we live in a digital transformation world, right? Digital transformation is changing your company to deliver your products in the way your customers wish they could receive them. And we find the wish by being informed, and we use data to inform us. And so I think the first thing is not clearly understanding the role that data plays, both in our ability to move forward, but also in how our companies are valued. So I think that's one spot that I think is missed. I think another really is not understanding the value of leadership. Because frankly, as a CTO, as any C-level, you don't really do much. Your job really is to inspire those that work for you and those around you to achieve the goals of the company.
Right.
And so all of the wins, all of the successes are because of other people. Right? And so leadership really is about celebrating those successes, giving credit where credit is due, and inspiring further success. So I think between kind of a lack of understanding of data and digital transformation and how it relates to your business specifically, and really not a clear focus on leadership, I think those are kind of two big ways that we're missing, two big things that are missed.
Right. Right. And also, Howard, I mean, in general, what we have heard around, and it's sort of a talk of the town, that skilled resources who can get the job done from a technology perspective are always short. So the IT workforce that you really want in your team is not going to be there. You are not going to find the talent that you're looking for quite easily. So in your opinion, CTOs in any company, can they help address this problem, or this is something that is out of their hands?
So absolutely. I would say you can't do it without the close collaboration of the CIO and the chief HR officer. But there's kind of a strategy that I use when dealing with that. And that is we're really not building, I'm not building just a team. I'm building an ecosystem of capability. And I really want to kind of put that first and foremost, because it's an ecosystem of capability, which means I don't have to have all of that on my staff. But what I really have to understand is what are the capabilities that I need, and what is both the fastest and the best path. And those may be two separate things. The fastest path to a capability might be contract, might be a vendor, might be a third party, right? And so I need to understand what are the third parties that exist that I have a relationship with, that I can have some trust and faith in, that will enable me to get that capability very, very quickly. And then I look to sustaining and I say, do I have the ability within my current workforce to add that capability? Or do I need to expand my current workforce? And what is the cost to doing so? Which is more than just sheer dollars, but rather I have to look at how does that person, the ideal person for that role work? Data science is a really good place to look because we effectively build data science teams using two different titles, or we should. The first is what I would call a citizen data scientist.
Okay.
And a citizen data scientist is very specifically someone that has tribal knowledge of the business, understands that specific company and where the data resides and how the business currently uses that data, and how that data can inform the current business, right? Okay. The second type is the expert data scientist. The expert data scientist has a master's or doctorate in data science or mathematics. They bring three really critical features to my team. The first is the deep understanding of mathematics, right? Specifically those around algorithms. The second is the ability to understand and explain different algorithms, and specifically how they relate to the model that we're trying to accomplish, the modeling we're trying to accomplish. And then the third is the ability to read, grade, and understand scientific papers, which is not super easy. The reason I split those into two very distinct buckets is because citizen data scientists tend to be loyal. They tend to be more homegrown, and they tend to be a fantastic place to invest. That's not to say we don't invest in expert data scientists, but when we look to an expert data scientist, what we really have to acknowledge is most of us don't have $300,000 to pay them. We really don't, right? But Google does, Microsoft does, Facebook does, right? And so we're constantly in competition to retain our expert data scientists.
Right.
So what that means is I need to treat them a little bit more like mercenaries. And I really want to make sure that I'm focusing on how do I get the specific value from those three things I highlighted in my expert data scientist, knowing I'm not likely to long-term retain them.
Right.
That makes sense?
Yeah, absolutely it does. And I would sort of appreciate what you have said, because I mean, in terms of the expert data scientists that you talked about, they are the ones who are like very much comfortable in terms of the business domain in which you are operating, right? So they are the ones who are in the operations, and they really live the company, or you can say breathe in or breathe out the organization culture and everything. And from the expert side, you are pretty much right there that there is a hefty amount of competition out there for people who are hungry to onboard these resources. So yeah, that was certainly helpful information. So when you started your career, as you have said that you started at a very early age, and then your career progressed with the passage of time, right? So what do you feel the difference is in terms of innovation right now as compared to what it was back in the day? Because what you said, that the first program that you developed in the age of 11, right? So technology, computer systems, and all these things were very different at that time as compared to what we have it today. So how you have seen the innovation evolving in your career?
So that's actually a really good question, because I've never thought about it that way. If I were to really think about it, I would say innovation hasn't actually changed, right? To my mind, innovation is a lens that you place over your thought process, right? Where the goal is to not just, what Wayne Gretzky said, we're not trying to play where the puck is, we're trying to play where the puck is going to be when we get there. Right? It's very commonly used when we talk about kind of innovation in these things. But when we really look to be truly innovative, we're currently playing hockey looking to see what will the next game everyone's playing be, not just where the puck will be. Right. And so the truth is, I don't think innovation has really changed. I think what we're innovating on has changed, right? The capabilities to that innovation may have changed. But innovation really is about how do I take how do I deliver a new market to a world that doesn't realize they need the market? Right. If we look at Apple, I argue, and I always have argued, Apple is not an invention company. They have never been an invention company, and they do not really truly invent. Right. I would say that the most kind of valuable thing Apple has brought both to themselves and to the world is the iPod. The iPod significantly changed how we consume and interact with music.
Mm-hmm.
Matter of fact, because of the iPod, the single became valuable versus the album. No one knew that was going to happen, and it was kind of a surprise to Apple as well. However, what's important about innovation is bringing invention to a market and oftentimes defining the market. They didn't invent the MP3 player. There were 100 MP3 player manufacturers at the time. I had many of them, right? What Apple did was said, while the MP3 player is a great invention, there's not actually a market for it outside of a select few kind of nerds like myself. What instead people are really looking for is a new, better way to consume music. And the innovation was, how do I deliver that better way to consume the music? And because that innovation really was pointed the right way, it led to things that no one thought of at the time that were continual innovations serving a market. Innovation without a market really is just an invention, right? And ultimately a failure. So when we look at how innovation has changed, innovation has really kind of followed technology invention in a really beautiful way. We could never do the things with data today in 1987. We simply lacked the processing power. We lacked the network capabilities. We lacked the ability to simply move the tremendously huge volumes of data around that at the time were enormous, if they even existed, and yet today are considered nominal. So I would say that innovation hasn't changed, but rather what we're innovating on has changed, right? Our capabilities due to invention.
I mean, if we talk about high level, then certainly the platform or maybe the building blocks of those innovation, which put the pieces of the puzzle together to actually construct something is changed, but however, the puzzle remains the same, with the puzzle being the innovation, right? So while we are discussing your career and your progression and everything, you have worked with startups as well as CTO, and startups basically demonstrate agility. They are more agile. They are more sort of tech savvy. They work on cutting edge technologies. They are very open to embrace new technologies and have them incorporated in their offering, right? As compared to you have also been a part of like an enterprise CTO as well, right? So you have been on both sides of the sphere or horizon, I would say. So what sort of difference have you feel between the two? Being a startup CTO and then an enterprise CTO as big as Hitachi?
So scalability is, I would say, the big difference between the two, right? Not just scale, but scalability.
In terms of like human resource or data?
All of it. Right. For you to be effective at scale, for you to be effective in scaling, you need a series of resources. Right. I need people. I need policies and procedures, and I need resources in the form generally of capital. Those are three things that a startup finds hard to get, and three things that an enterprise finds easier to get, right? If I have 8,000 people and I decide to go in a new direction, I can generally find 100 people within the organization to put on that project.
Right.
As a startup, if I decide I need to add a new product line, I'm hiring, I'm fundraising, I'm getting capital, right? It's generally a lot more work, right? The difference in a startup between kind of the MVP phase and the support phase tends to be the failure point.
Yep.
And the reason it tends to be the failure point is because I've surrounded myself with absolute geniuses, right? I could very easily have a company that's 80% PhDs, and our design phase is phenomenal. Everyone's cross-team, everyone's cross-functional, we're highly agile, we have 6 releases a day, we're 100% cloud-based, we're really pushing the envelope on what we're able to do, and every week, if you were to look back the previous week, we're making more progress than most enterprises make in a year in their product design.
Mhm.
We turn the lights on, we invite customers in, and the whole thing falls apart. Why does it fall apart? Because you can't have PhDs doing customer support.
Right. So
Right?
yeah,
And,
because please go
and no
ahead.
matter how good they are, I can't take 1,000 phone calls with one person.
Hmm. Right.
Right? And so it tends to be the scale transition that's really the inflection point on success or failure. And in reality, I think entirely too many startups think agility and scalability are the same thing. Agility is really a thought process,
Mm-hmm.
right? It requires you to think in a way that breaks things down into the smallest possible pieces, then enables the person to be a decision maker, to hold both the responsibility and authority over a thing, and accomplish it in the smallest number of pieces possible with the least required number of stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
If
Right.
we look to most large corporations, they're exactly the opposite,
Hmm.
right? Now, the happiest place to be is combine the two things, right? Get really smart people, really enable those people, scale the teams to as large as you need to, and remove as much bureaucracy as possible. Because I
Right.
think that's where companies fall apart,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Right. All right. So yeah, I mean, and also I would say the choice of technology when you are implementing an MVP, or I mean, if you are sort of implementing a product in startup or otherwise, the tool selection also plays a very important part. As you have also said that maybe you might not use a tank to kill a sparrow. There are other tools for that. So sometimes that particular piece, for example, using stuff like Kafka, or I mean irrelevant cloud services just for the sake of using it, maybe for an engineering marvel, sometimes also cause problems within the startups, that since they are engineers or a technical co-founder in there, and he or she is hungry for the technical superiority to demonstrate to the investors, maybe then sometimes these decisions basically pay actually cost the startups a lot. So also, Howard, in terms of the career progression, if we see, CTOs play a very important part in the backbone of any organization, especially if they are tech focused. But the natural progression from a CTO is to a CEO, that we have seen, I mean, in numerous LinkedIn profiles that we have come across. So the person who is a CTO at some point in time might end up being a CEO of another startup or another company. So do you think that this transition is a smooth one, especially you are too much tech focused and not very much business focused, or do you think otherwise?
Um, I think it's kind of a trick question, right? I actually I've seen that progression, and frankly, am excited about that progression at some point for myself. However, I think CEO is a very different role from CTO. And
Absolutely.
while it occurs frequently, not all CTOs not all companies really understand the goal of the roles.
Mm.
And a CTO as CEO isn't just a CTO with a different title, but rather should have a very, very, very different focus. If your CTO has those skills that we talked about at the very beginning, right? And two of them, well, three of them, I guess, courage, leadership, and charisma are high on the list of things, along with a really, really, really good understanding of the value of culture, to make a fantastic CEO.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely fantastic. Because companies are moving. The companies are tech companies. All companies are tech companies, right? And the reality is all companies are data companies.
Mm-hmm.
And no one is going to be better poised to understand that than someone who has the CTO background. So moving from CTO to CEO makes sense. However, the CEO role really is the inspiration behind the company. They are the core to the creation of the culture.
Right.
They communicate up and they communicate out far more than they need to communicate down. And yet when they communicate down, they need to be able to communicate down clearly, concisely, with strength and vision. And I think a lot of that is missed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think the path from CTO to CEO is as valid or more valuable than the COO or CFO path to CEO. Like, I think it's a very good path, but it's still so highly reliant upon the individual that I think it's important to understand what's the role of the CEO. And then as you go through your various phases, how does that change? A startup CEO versus a growth CEO versus a sustaining enterprise CEO are very, very, very different mindsets. And so, can you make that transition from one mindset to another? And then, I think the final thing is, and it's kind of true in startups throughout the kind of founder early employee bucket, is your goal to be the person in charge, or is your goal to see the company achieve as much success as possible?
Right.
If so, achieve the success, stay on the board, remain a member, right? Be the president, right? Be the key visionary, do the thing that you're best at, and think about bringing in someone that might be better at that specific role so that your company becomes the unicorn it can.
Absolutely. So also, Howard, in your opinion, what are some of the top technologies, I must say, that CTOs or CIOs should consider ramping up with them in 2021 and 2021?
Yeah, I think everything related to data should be the main focus.
Mm-hmm.
And in reality, I think the biggest area of change, the biggest collection of untapped data really is going to be computer vision. Mm-hmm. Right? The things we can do with computer vision are all low-hanging fruit at this point. Right? The changes and transitions and efficiencies we're gaining in computer vision blow nearly anything else away. And the goal really is to understand people. And the best way to understand people really is the infinite amount of data that can be gathered from computer vision, from the things we can see from putting pictures together. So I'd really pay attention there. I'd really take a broad look at what exists within data sets and what are you legally allowed to use. I think it's going to become more and more important that CTOs and CEOs really add an fundamental understanding of governance policy, really the legal and proper use of data. Mm-hmm. One of the things I think companies really should understand is we are the custodians of our customers' data. We're the custodians of our customers' information, and thus we should be the greatest privacy librarians in the known universe. Mm-hmm. And I think we fall short of that frequently. And so I think really if we were to look at 2020 and 2021 and 2022, we're going to see a drastic change in privacy legislation. Mm-hmm. And so we really need to start looking at how do I take advantage of all of these things while keeping in mind the goal is to be a good data custodian. Right. So how do I combine those two things? Again. And in that slot of the Venn diagram where there's overlap, how do I really focus on that area? Right. So I think that's kind of where I'd be pointed at.
Right. And in the, as a last question, I would like to get your thoughts together on the role of CTO, which is sort of changing or evolving. Like, how do you see the role changing or evolving in the future? Is it going to remain the same? Is it going to be more towards strategy? Is it going more towards technology? What are your thoughts?
So I think it's going to move more towards the CCO role, right? I think it's going to move more towards the kind of chief customer officer role, mm-hmm. And combine that with the current kind of technology focus with the strategic overlay, right? So how do I combine the needs and desires of the customer in a really focused, really personalized way by knowing and understanding the customer, along with the technology and all the technology that's available in the market on a very forward-looking strategic view, right? Not how do I solve the customer problem today, right? What customers are calling into support about, but really how do I ensure that we're meeting the long-term needs, the wish of those customers that really struggle to articulate it. I think that's really going to be where the CTO role goes, is more towards that kind of long-term strategic trusted advisor on using technology and data to inform about the customer wish that's coming around the corner. Right.
So I believe a lot of future or current CTOs would be listening to this as our audience. So any closing thoughts or any message for those guys or girls?
I can't stress how valuable leadership is. right? Leadership really is inspiring your people to be the best they can possibly be. And what I'd really like, especially as we kind of roll into the holiday season, is I'd like every CTO, every executive leader, everyone that wants to be a CTO to take a moment and really look back on kind of your accomplishments within leadership. How have the people who worked for you been better under your leadership? How have they excelled? How have they succeeded? And then maybe think about a New Year's resolution to simply do that better.
Right. That was very thoughtful. And Howard, in the last, I would like to really thank you for taking out the time and speaking to our audience and sharing your thoughts. And I would love to host you again on a new topic in the near future and take it up from where we are leaving right now. Thank you very much.
I think that would be great. I had a really good time. Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. Thanks, Howard. Have a good one. Bye.
You too.